is it necessary?
Well, I think it's absolutely necessary, and I do believe that we will. In the last 2 years, there have been two thresholds crossed. One was noted in the media, the other was not. The first was China surpassed the U.S. as the largest emitter of CO2. The second was that the developing countries as a group surpassed the industrial countries as a group as the largest emitters of CO2. So, what does that mean? One thing it means is that whatever national governments do in their own regions, if the fastest growing emitters are in developing countries, you know, by some calculations, if all of the advanced countries, Denmark, the US, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Japan, took their CO2 emissions down to 0, it would delay by, what, 20 years the massive increases in the developing world at present, reaching the same totals. So the advanced countries have to not only sharply reduce the emissions, but model the pathway and assist in the transition for countries that are under economic stress, many of them, and who need access to the new renewables and new efficiency technologies and partnerships that can help them make this transition with us. There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We have to go far quickly. And that's the essence of this challenge. And doing that without a global agreement is virtually unimaginable. So I do think there are those who look at what happened in the last few years in the UN process and get discouraged. They look at Durban coming up in December and get discouraged. And that discouragement leads some to say, well, maybe we just should give up on the whole prospect of an international agreement and just do it on our own. It's a global issue. We're in it together. And when the CO2 goes up, as I said, within 2 weeks, it's everywhere in the world. And so a global problem has to have a global solution. One thing that is being tested is whether or not we can, as a civilization, redeem the promise of self-governance and the utility of the rule of law. The instrument of law embodying our values and aspirations for the right kind of future really has to be put to work in solving this challenge. So it's necessary, and I do believe that it will happen. I think that the shift in consciousness is now beginning to take place, particularly among young people, but all over the world. I really do. I see it and I feel it.
Do you have 3 wishes or words of advice for Europe to get things moving?
3 wishes or words of advice for Europe. Don't build coal-fired generating plants. They're the worst. They also put out mercury, which is horrible. Put a price on carbon. Give the money back to the people in another way if necessary. But put a price on carbon. I began by speaking about CSR and the spectrum of value and how numbers command attention. One of the great psychologists of value said, he said, I'm sorry I can't remember his name now, but he said, you've all heard the saying, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem begins to look like a nail. If only things with price tags are seen as having value, then those things that don't have price tags can seem to have no value at all. We can tell ourselves to always remember the value of not putting this pollution up there. But if we put a price tag on it, then we will count it. And it will be included in the calculations that affect every decision billions of times a day.
So sort of like a supermarket price tag, this is the green price of
A tax on CO2. Cap and trade has been demonized. It's another way to do it. But a simple tax on CO2 that's rebated in other ways for the people would be the single most important way to solve the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you so much.
Thank you.